All right. Hello, everybody out in STEM Nation. Mr. Tyler and Mr. Santella are back with another edition of Getting to Know. And today, our guest is none other than middle school teacher, Mrs. Johnson. Is it Nesbitt?
Nesbitt, correct.
Okay, Johnson Nesbitt. No,
Right?
give her some,
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, you know what? It's a little hot in here. I'm going to take this off. Okay.
Oh, Mr. Santella,
Oh.
Mr. Santella, you did what I did.
Yeah, I wanted to look more like Mr. Tyler. It's a personal goal of mine. So
That's
I'm
a
growing the
good
beard
goal
out,
to
and
have.
I got rid of all my hair. So,
Oh,
Love it.
life goals. All right, Mr. Tyler, you want to start us off?
I will go ahead and start us off, Miss Johnson Nesbitt. If you are ready, we're going to start with your name. And then the first question I have is, since it's your first year at STEM Lab, where did you teach before?
All right. My name, Kirsten Johnson Nesbitt. That's my name. I actually added the Nesbitt on 2 years ago. So it's been hard to get used to the Johnson Nesbitt. I just used to be Miss Johnson. Before this, I taught at Thornton Middle School. I taught there for, how many years has it been? 8 years, I think. I actually started out with Nafi. Nafi was my my resident mentor at Thornton Middle, and then I went over to Northland High School and back to Thornton Middle. So
Awesome. So you've known Nafi for quite a few years.
yep, I've known Nafi since Jackson was born.
Yeah. And see, I had no idea that you guys had known each other previous to being at STEM, so that I'm even learning stuff about you today.
Yeah.
So where are you originally from?
I'm from Colorado. My parents both went to CU, so Colorado native here. And they met at CU. They got married, moved down to a place in Larkspur. They actually built the house that they live in, and I grew up there. So my parents never moved. I'm from Colorado. I've never lived anywhere else. I've visited a lot of places, but this is home to me.
So we've got 3 Colorado born and raised natives here. I love it. Love it. We've already mentioned your parents, but go ahead and tell us about your family, including any pets. Now, we will get to all of the other pets and reptiles and everything later on.
So leave the classroom ones out.
We will get to those later on. That's right. Yeah. So but your family, including any pets you might have at home.
Well, my parents, I grew up in Colorado. My siblings, I have an older sister. She is 18 months older than I am, and she is a vet at Ohio State. She's finishing up her residency there. My younger brother, 3 years younger, he's still in Colorado. He was a developer for Woolspot printers through SparkFun. So he did that. Let's see. My little sister is 6 years younger than me, and she lives out in South Carolina now. She's an occupational therapist, so she's one of those on the front line. She's still working, so keep in contact with her every day. My family, my nuclear family, that's them. And then my husband, Lynn, he works for Premier Credit Union, and my baby, Eric, who joined us in November of last year. He just turned 6 months. We just switched over to solid foods, which is crazy. We're doing, he gets like whole pieces of food, and he's figuring out how to stick them in his mouth, which usually ends up with him sticking them in his eye or ear, or just, rubbing them on his face because he hasn't figured it out yet. But that's my family. I also have 2 cats. I have a big, fluffy white cat. She is the sweetest and the most ridiculous cat. She behaves more like a dog in that you can call her name and she will come running. She loves attention. She wants to be wherever you are, in your lap, on your face. She just wants to be there. And then I have another cat who's more cat-like. She's the older of the 2, Strahi, and she's a black cat, Torty cat, and she's a sweetheart. So that's my family.
Well, speaking of your sister, we thank her for her service to helping everyone right now. It's just incredible that she's able to do that. So when you talk to her next, please, from Mr. Santella and I, give her our thanks.
I will definitely do that.
Well, thank you. So the next question I have for you is, why have you decided to make STEM Lab your home?
That is an awesome question. So I have, of course, kept in contact with Nafi and Miss Brabant. Miss Brabant and I used to work together as well at Thornton Middle. And I just get to hear about all the wonderful things that happen over at STEM Lab. And I, over the years, I grew more curious and wanted to be a part of it. And last year when the expansion happened, there then became a space, and I was so excited to get to apply. I was like, oh, I'm just gonna apply. I'm just gonna throw it out there. And if I get to be a part of STEM Lab, that's gonna be amazing. And I got to be a part of it, and I've loved being here ever since. Well, not here because now I'm at my house, but yeah, you understand.
Right.
Yeah.
So speaking of you getting the job at STEM Lab, what is the best part of your job?
The best part of my job are the students. I don't know. There's no other best part. It's the kids, and it's hard because during remote learning, I don't get to see you guys as much, the STEM stars as much, which is just, it makes everything really hard, because they are the light of the job. It's everything that I get to do, everything I get to learn from them, everything that they teach me. I thought I knew a lot before I became a teacher, and the students are teaching me everything. When I came to STEM Lab, I had an idea about what teaching at STEM Lab would be like, and they have completely flipped that in an amazing way. And I've just learned so much from being here with STEM Lab kids and the staff. So
awesome. So the last one that I have for you until Mr. Santella takes over is, you just spoke about being at home and being in quarantine. What is one positive thing that has come from being in quarantine?
One positive thing that has come from being in quarantine, I mean, other than the fact that I can wear sweatpants all the time and nobody knows.
Well, yeah, right, of course.
That positive piece. I think the best part has been being able to go and pick up my son. My son's in daycare 4 out of the 5 days during the week, but being able to go pick him up when I'm done with my office hours and getting to spend more time with him has been the best part of this whole situation. That's the silver lining, is that I get to spend a lot more time with Eric than I might have had we been back in school.
Right. Mr. Santella, are you ready to take over?
I am. And that's pretty cool. You get to spend more time in those moments when they're just growing so fast, and yeah. It's definitely a blessing. I miss those days. I do. Well, I miss everything but changing diapers. So
yeah.
Yeah. All right. So, how did science become your passion?
Ooh, good question. I had a 7th grade teacher, Mr. McKinley, and before 7th grade, which oddly enough was the grade I used to teach over at Thornton Middle, I liked science, but I wasn't passionate about it. And when I had Mr. McKinley, just the way that he introduced science to us and kind of let us lead the way completely made my passion for science explode. My mom and I were actually talking recently because she thinks it's funny that I'm in science now, because I was never the science kid. Like, I didn't do experiments. I wasn't like out in the woods, like exploring and all the things that I love to do now. She's like, I just never would have guessed that for you. She's like, you weren't the sciencey, like smart kid. I was like, oh, thanks, Mom. But yeah, Mr. McKinley really ignited that passion. And then after that, I got into a lot of opportunities that helped push that forward. In high school, I had AP anatomy and physiology. and I got to go do a cadaver dissection, which got me super interested in life science and the human body and things like that. And then in college, I had a professor who I did a bunch of research with on bats, and I got to handle live bats, and I got to go out into the environment and look at how the environment was affecting the population of bats, and that just pushed, like, there was a domino effect. And then recently, when I worked at North Glen High School, I worked with Kent Hups, and he actually has a dinosaur quarry out on the western slope in Colorado. And he, the first year I worked there, he invited all of the science staff to go on our spring break to go dig up dinosaurs. And I was like,
That's awesome.
I cannot wait. They were my favorite thing in middle school. That's what Mr. McKinley taught in 7th grade was, prehistoric time and life science and all of that. And I was like, I cannot wait. I cannot wait. So I went out, and ever since then, I've gone at least once a year, except for this last year, to go dig up dinosaur bones, either with the Denver Museum of Nature and Science or with Kent Hups, or just going out looking for dinosaur tracks. And so it's the field work, it's the actual digging into the science that got me there.
That's amazing. And that's so cool that you have an in with somebody who literally is like, hey, I need help finding dinosaur bones. Let's go do it. So that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
It's pretty incredible.
All right. So do you have any science experiment gaffes or something funny that has happened when you've been teaching, doing a science experiment with your class?
Well, so before I went back and got my master's in curriculum instruction and was therefore, hanging out with NAFI, I actually worked at a Jewish day school in Denver. I was the only science teacher for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, and they had the two genders. So the girls were taught in the school building, and the boys were taught in the basement of the religious building. And I decided that I was going to do a Rube Goldberg machine with the kids. Do you know what that is?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like you roll a ball and it hits a domino and it does a thing, and really cool. So I had them design their own, and actually 8th graders this year did their own Rube Goldberg machine. So they should all know that. Anyway, I had my boys in the basement of the religious building building these Rube Goldbergs, and one set of boys wanted to build a Rube Goldberg that would ignite a barbecue. And so I was like, yeah, totally cool. This is my first year teaching right out of college. I'm like, let's do it. Like, there's so much you learn in your first year, like not to give people matches and flammable things. But so I had brought in just a little bit of what was it? The liquid fuel, and I had allowed them to put just a tiny bit in the bottom of this pan.
Just a bottle. Just a bottle.
Just a little bit. Well, I turned my back. And they were like, they tried it a few times and it wasn't igniting, and they were really getting frustrated with it. And they were like, you know what? I hypothesized that if we put more of the fluid in the bottom of this turkey basting pan, that we can get it to light. And I was like, well, I didn't know they were doing this. And they sprayed almost the entire bottle in the bottom, so it had a layer of flammable liquid. And they did it again. This time, there was a little bit of gas buildup, and the flame went in, and this ball of fire went up from this turkey basting pan. There was a scorch mark on the ceiling, and I hear screaming from behind me, and I turn around, and the wall is on fire. The turkey basting pan, because they had set it up on the wall, they had kind of used the wall to like prop their stuff up, and the turkey basting pan is on fire. The entire wall is on fire. There's a window, because we're in the basement, so it's like garden level. There's a window at the top, and I had them open it a little bit just to like make sure the fumes went out, and I was thinking that much. There's like fire everywhere. So I go running over, and I don't know what to do. We don't have a fire extinguisher in the classroom. We're the only classroom in the building, and nobody else was there because it wasn't like, it was a weekday. So we're all alone in the basement of this building, which I have now allowed my students to catch on fire. So I open up the window and I grab the burning pan and I go to like lift it to the window, but on the way up my hands burn. So I drop the pan, it flips over, and the liquid and everything spills out on the carpet. Now the carpet's on fire.
Oh my gosh.
So I'm yelling at the boys, go get Rabbi Goldstein, go get Rabbi Goldstein. None of them are moving because this to them is like the coolest thing that's happened. None of them are moving. And I didn't have my cell phone on me, which probably wasn't a good idea. I did have a classroom phone, but there's flames everywhere and I'm not thinking, so I didn't like grab the classroom phone. So I go over and I stomp on all the flames and managed to get it all out. The wall has scorch marks, the ceiling has scorch marks, the carpet's burned in this big like burn mark. Finally get Rabbi Goldstein on the phone and tell him what happened. They bring the fire trucks out to double check that the building's okay and like the insulation's not on fire. And I thought for sure I was gonna be fired that day. But everybody was safe. I had burned hands, but everybody else was fine. We did not burn down the building. I was
Excellent.
not fired.
That
They
was
put it in like their parent newsletter though, and I was like,
that
Right.
was like so much more of an answer than what I would have expected.
That's awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And you know what? Like teachers, we all have those. This is my like the story always starts with, well, my first year of teaching,
oh yeah, oh yeah,
boom, right?
because
So-
we learn over time not to leave bottles
Exactly.
of lighter
That's
fluid
awesome.
around the classroom.
Well, we're glad everybody came out safe. And hey, that could have been a moment for some child that you were teaching where they're like, I am going to be a scientist. This is my moment. So, you know, there you
Yeah.
go. Awesome. All right. So I think you have already kind of touched on this, so we can move on if this is a question that you've already answered. But how did you become to love reptiles so much?
Well, I actually, when I was growing up, we live kind of out in the middle of nowhere. I don't know if you guys have been down to Larkspur, but
Yep,
it's
for
a
sure.
one exit town in the middle of nowhere. And so our backyard, growing up, we were the only house on the block, and our backyard was the foothills. So I would go out and explore, and a lot of times we would find garter snakes and bull snakes, sometimes the occasional rattlesnake. And the snakes actually became my way into all reptiles. I didn't actually find turtles until much later, or loved turtles, but snakes, I would catch them and I would put them in jars, big pickle jars. My mom loved pickles, so we always had huge pickle jars around. And so I'd poke holes in the top of the pickle jar and throw a snake in there, and then, you know, keep it for a couple weeks until either I decided to let it loose or it died because I didn't know what to feed it. That was my introduction to snakes. And from that point on, I've always had a love of snakes and turtles and lizards and
Excellent. Okay. So snakes are the one animal that I will be on top of the table. I will be running. And my experience is that, you know, I grew up on a farm, and we always had snakes, but they were never presented to me in a calm fashion. We used to have cats, and they would just bring them and like drop them at my feet when I'm not watching. So I would just freak out. Or one time we were putting down a cement floor in the chicken coop, but we had to take the old one out, and we pried it up, and a giant bull snake just popped out, and it was huge. I mean, it was as,
oh my
it was
goodness,
as big
yeah.
as a baseball bat, like the thickness. So that freaked me out. So I've really tried to like embrace snakes, but they always sneak up on me. So it's just, anyways, I appreciate that you have yours in nice containers. All right.
Well, no, it's 2 nights ago. One of them got up, and I had gone to bed, and my husband comes running down because he is not a snake person either. He hates
Really?
that I have the snakes home. Oh yeah, he does not love them.
Oh.
He does not like them. He will tolerate them. He He will feed them. He will love them from a distance, but he is not a snake person. And so he comes running downstairs, probably around midnight. And he's like, I need you. And I was like, what happened? So I like run upstairs and I'm like freaking out a little bit. I'm like, is Eric okay? What's going on? Because he just opens the door and is like, I need you. And I'm like, ah. So I go up there and Stumpy, which is one of my little garter snakes, had pushed open his cage and had crawled out. And of course I have 2 cats. And so the cats have cornered the snake and he's released the musk. So it smells awful. And, you know, they're trying to bat at him and my husband's freaking out. I'm like, oh Lord. So I had to capture him and put him back in. But yeah, he's escaped now 3 times in his time with me. Buddha's escaped once. You know the story of that one.
Whew. Yes.
All too well.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Luckily, I was not at school that day. All right. So tell us about rescuing and rehabbing reptiles and how that's kind of become a part of your life.
Well, my first year back at Thornton Middle School, I didn't have any classroom pets, but I had a couple of kids who were interested in all sorts of things. And every time that there was an injured animal, whether it was a reptile or not, the office would actually call me because the kids would bring it into the office and dump it on the office lady's desk. And of course, they're like, science?
I want to imagine Miss Karen and Miss Robin's reaction if a kid were just to bring up, here's look, a snake.
Well, there was a 6th grader a couple of years ago who had found these baby birds who had tried to fledge out of their nest, and they weren't injured or anything, but she panicked and put them in her shoes and then walked barefoot to school with these birds in her shoes and put her shoes with the birds in them on the desk, and the office ladies were like, hello, Miss Johnson, come down, please. Yeah, so, you know, rescuing and rehabbing animals of all sorts was kind of a thing for me. But there aren't a whole lot of places that will take snakes, especially garter snakes. So my first reptile that I had that is no longer with us was a snake, and it had been attacked by something. It had, you know, scratches and claw marks, and the kid brought it in and was like, we need to help it. And his name was actually Tyler. I remember him very well because he brought in this sad, pathetic snake, and we nursed it back to health. And we, you know, it lived for probably 4 or 5 years in my classroom. And then, you know, as things happen, it ended up dying. But that was my first classroom animal that got brought to me. Well, then once the kids learned that I would take in reptiles, take in animals that were injured, I ended up with a lot of things. At one point, I think I had 5 or 6 lizards. There had been a 5th grade teacher at one of the elementaries who had done some work around lizards with anoles. And they had brought in the little anole lizards, and they were like, we don't want them anymore, here. So we had a bunch of those. We had the Stumpy whose tail got run over. We had Mystery who was stuck in a storm drain. We had a bearded dragon that a family no longer wanted. We had box turtles, which some of them have passed on, but yeah. So all these different creatures, kids just, here. Which is great. I love it. I think that, you know, Mathis, if you had an ambassador snake in a classroom when you were growing up, maybe it would not be such a fear. Not that you would love them, because that's not my goal, is to get everybody to love snakes, because that's impossible. But at least to not be afraid of them, because most of them, the majority of them, are not troublesome.
Yep. Well, that's a great point, because, you know, growing up, we had a rabbit, we had a turtle, and we had a guinea pig. Those were the class pets I had in my academic days. No snakes. So.
No snakes.
All right. So you are a new mom.
Yes.
How old is Eric now?
He's 6 months. He was 6 months last Sunday. So
Excellent.
6 months. And
well, you know, happy belated Mother's Day. I hope you had a great day.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
So how's it going? How's it going being a new mom?
It is an adventure. There were things I thought I knew, just like with teaching, there are things I thought I knew, and kids in teaching teach you differently, that you don't know anything. And my son has been teaching me that I knew nothing about being a parent, about how to interact with, a kid of 6 months or younger. He surprises me all the time with the things that he learns. I think it was I think it might have been the last week in April, he learned how to roll over. And it was not that like this is slow process of I can roll to my side or I can, he just learned how sometime in one day where he could just flip over. And then all he did was just roll over, and it would freak me out because I'd put him down on his back. I'd walk around the corner because that's what I've been doing. I'd put him on the floor on his back and he'd be fine. He was on his play mat, and I'd go around the corner and come back and he'd be like 6 feet away next to something dangerous. And I'm like, how did you get there? But he's taught me a lot. He's absolutely wonderful, except for at 2 a.m. when I'm like, all I want to do is sleep and you want to talk to me.
Yep.
So there's that. But it's such a different experience.
It is.
And I'm loving it.
Yeah. And when someone asks you, parent to be, or what can I expect? Or they want some sort of advice or something, and you just can't give it to them. Like it's impossible to prepare someone to be a parent. It is
definitely
possible. You can read books, you can, like I have 2 kids and I thought I knew everything. And then my second child came and she could not be more different than my first child.
Right.
So I was just like, what's going on? I have this. I know it. Nope.
Yeah.
So excellent. Yeah. Okay. So how much are you sleeping?
Depends on the night. He has recently decided to boycott sleep again. He had gotten to the point where he would sleep for a good 5 to 6 hours in the early evening, and then he'd be up a little bit in the early morning. But now we're sleeping about 4.5 hours. So it's fun. I feel like I'm in a fog always. And it's not solid 4.5 hours. It's like half an hour here, and then he's up and wants to talk, and like it's rough. But he goes through cycles. So sometimes we sleep more than others. Yeah, I'm really hoping we're leaning back towards full nights sometime.
Well, and it's this weird mind game, right? Even when they're sleeping, you're almost on edge. Like, okay, I gotta go check and make sure everything's okay.
Right.
When you could just be sleeping, but that's not how we're wired. So it's a cruel game that they play on us, and that's all I can say. All right. Yeah. All right. If you weren't a teacher, what would you be doing?
Well, in my 3rd year of teaching, I think it was, I'd always been interested in flying. My 6th graders know this story, but when I was about 5 years old, I had watched Pippi Longstocking, and I decided that I too could fly. And so I went into my sister's feather collection because she collected things. She collects everything, but she had collected feathers, and I picked out 6 big long feathers, and I went outside. My mom had asked me to go check on my brother in the car because she had left him in the car with the windows rolled down. He was asleep, and I had gone out, and instead of checking on my brother, I went to the hill behind our house, and I stuck the feathers between my fingers, and I got ready to fly, and I talked myself up, and I ran and flew off the edge, and I was like, I'm flying, and then I was like, I'm falling, and then I broke my left arm.
Oh no.
Oh yes. And then my mother's a terrifying woman. And then I decided I wasn't going to scream at that point because I knew I'd get in trouble. So I went to the bottom of the stairs and like collapsed like I had fallen down the stairs. Anyway, I didn't get in trouble. But yeah, that was the first time I broke my arm. But I had a love of flying from an early age. And I think maybe my dad instilled that in us because he was a aerospace engineer. He designed payload fairings for the Delta Heavies for United Launch Alliance and Lockheed Martin way back when it used to be called Marietta, there we go, before Lockheed Martin. anyway, he's always had a love of space and a love of flying things that direction. And so in my 3rd year of teaching, I decided I wanted to be a pilot if this teaching thing didn't work out. I was teaching high school at the time, and high schoolers are just different. And I could have been mistaken for a high schooler, and I often was. And I wasn't very good at teaching high school. I'm better at middle school. I think there's a weirdness factor that I fit more in. So I decided I was going to be a pilot, and I started taking flying lessons. And I actually got to the point where I had taken a 2-seater Cessna from takeoff to landing, flying from here to Buena Vista. And then I gave up on that. So
Because you're an awesome teacher. So you're like, I don't need this. I will just
Right.
crush
because
it in
I
the
got back,
classroom.
I got the passion for teaching back. It was a rough year, but it got better.
See, another thing I can relate to, I think as teachers, those first couple, I really think those first 3 years are really like this roller coaster of, I can do this. Nope. I can do this. Nope. And you're always like looking for the what if. So,
Yeah.
well, we're glad you stuck with teaching. We're so grateful to have you at STEM Lab. So
Thank you.
even though you have snakes in your room. Okay.
Even though.
All right. So we're going to go ahead and jump into the lightning round. So for the lightning round, just your gut reaction, whatever your first inclination is, that's what we would like to hear.
All right.
Some of these are this or that. Some of them are fill in the blank, and then one of them is, like, give me one word for this. All right.
All right.
All right. Here we go. All right. Snakes or turtles?
Snakes.
Sleep or coffee?
Coffee.
An easy way to make me smile is blank.
Tell me a story.
Excellent. Changing a diaper makes me blank.
Gag.
My favorite scientist is blank.
Jane Goodall.
Ah, excellent.
I love her.
Very nice.
Number one rule of Reptile Club is?
We don't talk about Reptile Club.
Yes. Love
No,
it. Perfect. That's the perfect answer.
That is the perfect answer.
All right. Your favorite dinosaur is?
Ankylosaur.
Excellent. All right. And one word to describe STEM Lab.
Does it really have to be one?
One word to describe STEM Lab.
Incredible.
Bam. All right, Mr. Tyler.
Awesome. That I gotta say, I love that answer about the Reptile Club, is that we don't talk about Reptile Club. I was thinking it might be, always close the containers, always, make sure they're secure, but
That should be.
much better answer on your part. So we are finished up with our questions here, and we actually just want to give you the opportunity to send out a message to your students, parents, the STEM community, whoever you want. The floor is yours. Take as long as you want and just give out your message.
All right. Hey, STEMsters and all of the STEM community, parents and teachers and everyone involved. Thank you for embracing me and embracing my weird, because I feel like I belong, and I have loved being a part of this community. And I cannot wait for what the future brings for us. So keep on keeping on. Love you guys.
Amazing. And you bring up a great point there. I think to be a STEM Lab member, you have to have a little bit of weird in you. But that's, it's what brings us together. It's awesome. So
yeah.
I love it. Embrace the weird. Okay. Well, we just wanted to say thank you. We know that the teachers are crazy busy right now, wrapping up the school year. So we want to thank you so much for your time today. And hopefully we will all be together soon. And, until we see you again, thanks for everything you do. And again, thanks for coming to STEM Lab. We're super stoked to have you.
Yes, thank you.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.